whatever I think somebody's like end goal is, whether it even not in magic, I think that the like you need to make sure that you have good technical skills um in some way to be able to like bring that idea into life. So if you're writing briefs for a designer, you need to be good at writing them. You need to be good at like visualizing those.
Hmm.
If you're sitting down and designing something to like go to print for playing cards or a trick or something,
Hmm.
then you need to have like a good facility with whatever tools you are that you're using. Because unless you have like quite extensive technical ability, then you're limited in terms of what vision you can bring to life. So if I have an idea of what something's going to look like,
Hmm.
I've been doing this for long enough that I can make it look like that.
Hmm.
Whereas if you've got a very limited technical range, then you can only produce and you will only visualize work that exists within that technical
Exactly.
range.
Hello to everyone who's joining into this episode of The Process. As usual, we start by introducing our new guest. Today it's going to be Mr. Phill Smith from Phill Smith Creative. So for people who aren't familiar with you, including myself, for me this is going to be really enjoyable because I've been following your work as well. So I'm looking forward to sharing and discovering a little bit about yourself and your creativity and your passions. So for people who aren't necessarily aware about you, your background and stuff, the floor is yours. How would you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm a I don't know, I've thought about this quite a bit. I'm a magic inventor and a graphic designer, and I do a lot of work within magic. I design my own material, which I release through Phill Smith Creative. And I have done for quite a while and written a bunch of books about mentalism, which is my main focus inside the field of magic. But I've also worked for quite a long time in magic doing just graphic design for lots of different magicians. So promotional design for like promoting their shows, posters, websites, all of that kind of thing. And also I've done a lot of like magic product consulting and development work for other people's products and designing things for other people's products. I've got a bit of um, a knack for designing marks and marked playing cards, which is kind of a special interest of mine. And I've had some sort of success with that in the past. And I've done a bunch of consulting and script work for a few different television shows and other people's appearances on TV. So I'm kind of like I'm just a backroom guy in magic.
Mhm.
So I think that that's probably the best description is that I come up with it. Someone else can usually go and perform it better than I can, but I've got a bit of a niche for um, coming up with the original material for myself and like trying to do things for other people that fits their style as well. There you
The
go.
magic came first, or the design came first?
Well, it's a big rewind there, isn't it? I mean, I was interested in magic before I became a designer,
Okay.
because I was interested in magic when I was a kid, and I wasn't a designer; I was just a kid.
Mhm.
But I've also always been interested in art and
Aesthetics.
illustration and design because that's my dad's well was before he retired a technical illustrator, and my mum was also very capable like drawist, artist,
Mhm.
illustrator of various different kinds. So I've always kind of been involved in art and design more. I would say I'm more started as a designer, and then like in terms of my professional work, magic came later.
Because from what I've seen from your work, and if ever people, I encourage them to go onto your website, I'll just post a link at the bottom or in the descriptions. It's phillsmithcreative.com.
So
Uh, because we have similar backgrounds, and I think that what's important to also explain to people who are reading this is that I don't think that's just design that what you do because it's the whole landscape of the project.
yeah,
So it's like a 360-degree essence that can encapsulate like an ecosystem for a project. So it's a whole entity of itself. So it's not just that it looks nice. Like it has the pattern, it has the essence, it has so it has the ecosystem that goes with it. So there's a lot of
yeah. I think probably the way that I see it is that in terms of magic, I use design as a storytelling tool.
yes, yes,
So in the same way as that writing the script is
yes.
an element of coming up with the story for the piece, and conceptualizing the trick itself and developing the framing, the actual design of the product, the cards, the book, the whatever it is that's going to be used, is a storytelling element. And
Hmm.
so I rather than mentally separating everything out, that's why it takes me so long to like explain it. My business card would have to be really long for that product,
Yeah.
like job description at the bottom. But
Hmm.
I kind of see myself as like an artist basically, and what I do is all of the things that you've just said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's almost like because at a certain point I find that like you just said the term to like label someone who has all those things, it becomes pretentious to say a visionary, but I find that that is a little bit the sphere of what it is because
yeah,
it's beyond one little thing. Like I'll give you an example because again, people when they're going to go and look at your work, you say that you're able to lend that graphic design voice towards magic, but the thing is that within magic there's certain flavors, okay? So for example, one of them could be carnival style, okay? So I think you're going to know where I'm going with this because you have certain cards exactly, okay? The thing is that replicating the essence of something can look very cheesy and imitated, but there's something in your work that looks authentic.
yeah.
You know what I
The
mean?
part of that is I will probably get into this later on. Part of it is that I'm a technician in terms
Hmm.
of the production of the visuals. So
Hmm.
what I do is very complicated, and I've been
Hmm.
doing that for a long time. I've been using the software that I mainly work in, Illustrator,
Hmm.
for what would it be now?
Since it was invented, probably.
35 years, 36 years. So it's inside, like it's in there. It's part of the operating system, and I've got quite a knack for like simulacra. So if I can see a style and I have a vision for how I want it to be, then I can kind of identify what the elements of that are. And because I've got a very broad technical background, I
Hmm.
can usually like work out a way to make that visibly happen in terms of the design.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's funny that you should mention. I think about that sometimes. That kind of that like emulation and simulation of like a visual style or a
Yeah,
concept or a combination of styles is part of I think how I work. Yeah,
definitely. So now that let's say you've introduced yourself, for people who aren't necessarily familiar with the show, the process, the whole theme behind it is that through research and stuff, I've discovered that there seems to be five common threads, like five steps within the creative process. So the first one would be inspiration, what people do on a regular basis to stay inspired. Step two would be incubation. So how do you manage that inspiration? Do you set aside some time, like a scheduled, organized time within your week to be able to fulfill that research? Step three would be the eureka moment, so illumination. What happens when you have that idea sparked? Step four would be the exploration. So basically, what are the steps that you take to be able to develop that idea? And then finally, step five, for certain people, it's implementation, such as yourself, because certain people, they enjoy step three. For them, the eureka moment, finding the solution for the puzzle, that's enough. But for other people, they want to have that idea become like an entity in itself and its life of itself. So step five for them is implementation. Now, just a side thing in regards to our guest today. Initially, when I started this project, this is the episode 16, so we've went through 15 individuals. Everyone has been exceptional, but Phill is the first person here who's actually a creative, a person similar to me who creates tools for performers. Okay, and what I like about this is that essentially with this project, with the process, is that I wanted to peer into the mind of other creatives, and just it just so happened that it didn't necessarily land me with the people who develop ideas. It was a lot of people who execute those ideas. So a lot of gems came through. So I'm really happy to be able to finally have someone who hands-on, like the technical
Yeah.
aspect of taking the idea, and because there's a production aspect to this too, which hasn't been really touched with other people. So I'm happy to have you on board, and I appreciate you taking the time
Cool.
with us. And you're just for people who don't know, you're based in the UK, correct?
Yeah, so we're sort of right in the middle of the UK. We're sort of far away from everywhere in a little tiny town
Okay.
in the shed. I always talk
Yeah.
about the shed, but it's like I'm
Yeah.
just in the
Well, as
garden
long
of
as
the
you're not
shed.
in Greenland, I think we're okay.
Yeah, yeah, we'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay. So, so for step one, basically, inspiration. What do you do? Well, how long have you been doing this career?
So I've been like a commercial designer since I left university, which is you can probably tell from looking at me, it was a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
Um, and at the same time, when I was training to become a designer, is when I joined the first Magic Society that I was in Leicester, which is a city near here. So those kind of like they both leveled up at the same time, design and magic. So it was probably about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And then I worked doing just regular design. So I'm doing like business cards and letterheads and signs and stuff like that for local businesses and companies. And then gradually started doing some work for people within magic. And it just turns out, I think that there's not that many designers who work in magic who are also very familiar with magic.
Hmm.
So I've sort of carved a little bit of a niche, and it's probably been maybe 10 to 15 years that I've been working a lot in magic. And now almost all of the work that I do as a designer is within magic for, you know, people people who want tricks developing or my own stuff
Hmm.
or, promotional stuff for other people.
Is it possible that you publish the books or produce the books for Murphy's or?
Yeah, so I mean, I at the moment I'm doing a load of work for Murphy's, and I do so Murphy's like bought L&L, which is a company that a lot of people will know. We've got like this long back catalogue of material that I think a lot of us came up learning from.
Mhm.
And one of the things is they've got a lot of books. But part of what's happened is because of the way that the transfer has worked, Murphy's don't have all. I don't know if I'm not supposed to say this. They don't have all of the production files for the books. So what will happen is that we'll get like the ebook that's been released for a
Mhm.
particular book,
Yeah.
and then they're like, Phil, just like tidy this up, redesign it a little bit so it looks like it's a book from 2026 rather than a book from 1985.
Hmm.
So we've had a good chance to do a few of those, and they've all been like real classics because they want to start off with the ones that people are going to be most interested in. So it's like the card magic of Nick Trost or book for Michael Lamar and yeah, some really interesting ones. The big Erdnase one has just finished, and this thing for Peter Turner, which wasn't an LLL project that they just dealt with directly, has just come out the masterclass, which was a headache.
Yeah. No, I think it's great because you'll probably be able to inject a little bit of aesthetics and a little bit of breathing room into these volumes because people who are familiar with like maybe older books like for Magic, it's very dense and it's a little bit hard to kind of get through it. Like,
Yeah, I think the part of it again comes from this sort of synergy between the fact that I'm a magician and I'm a graphic designer, so I can
yeah,
technically produce the book and work out how the layout should be. But I've also got the background from being a magician, learning stuff out of a book, of knowing how it feels to, what you expect when you buy a magic book, what you want it to feel like when you're turning the pages, how the layout's going to work, so that that everything's accessible and as easy to read as possible, so that the book can get out of the way and you can see the material more easily, which is the goal. And they
yeah.
keep asking me to do it, so it must be going okay.
For sure. What I've seen, I really enjoy your work, even if I don't necessarily own a lot of it, but I think that's really well made. So I highly encourage you to continue for sure. And since that you're saying like you've been this for a long time and it shows with the beard and everything, what does one do to stay inspired? Like since that you've seen so much over the time.
I thought about, yeah, all of these. So I've got my little notes on my computer just here because I've watched a load of these. I find it fascinating to see what other people's processes are, because I operate a bit in a vacuum. I've not ever really been part of the design world or the design community, and I'm kind of a bit on the outskirts of magic as well, just doing my own little thing. but the majority of the inspiration for my own work and the things that I do, and as much as possible work that I'm doing for other people now, um, the inspiration tends to come from, like, I've got a bit of a philosophy about how the world works, and I try and find a way to um, like express that or communicate that through what I'm doing. Not
Mhm.
always in a particularly overt way. There'll be some like themes or concepts, and often it's a case that I'm just chewing through those ideas in my head, and they kind of end up like coming to life and manifesting in some of the stuff that I'm doing. It just finds
Mhm.
an avenue and an outlet through there.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
I'm smiling because what I enjoy about this whole thing of doing the interviews is, and this is what I was hoping since the beginning, is that you don't see a pattern when you don't have a lot of content yet, right? Now that I've had a couple of people, I start to see a thread, and that's what I wanted since the beginning, you know? And something that you just said, it made me smile. It was like it almost sounded like you saying that you become a vessel to be able to just execute
Yeah.
yeah, that's something that comes up a little bit, and for some reason I kind of associate that with meditation. So you know what I mean? Because for me,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
for me personally, that's something that I like, not without getting into the whole esoteric thing or whatever. I tend to set aside a bit of time in my day to be able to just reflect, and that's something I find that is less and less popular in today's age and society, is like
Yeah.
taking time, because
No,
everyone,
I understand what you mean in terms of that, because you just
yeah.
said like setting aside that esoteric aspect of it. I think that increasingly over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, that's not something that you should set aside as an artist, as a creative. You are trying to you've got there's two like goals. One of them is to create something that other people are going to be interested in, and that means that you've kind of got to take the temperature of the pool. You've got to figure out what the general vibes are. What is going to resonate with people, and that means that you have to, like accept what is being thrown at you
Mhm.
by culture or the universe or whatever it is that you want to ascribe it to. So you've got to have some input and some reflection on that. And then also there's like the other side of it is that there's some aspect of yourself that you want to try and like explore, develop, communicate, manifest. Once you start digging into the work that you're talking about, the pure creative aspect of it, rather than just like what software do you use, or sort of what's your best format for
Yeah.
like sending files off to print, then I feel like you very quickly you're going to bump up against it. I don't think that you can get very far like a serious practitioner of any art without starting to think about how the world works.
It was
Does that make
that
sense?
it
Like
would
if you look
it
at famous
1000
painters,
it
they
does.
they explore aspects of the world. So Monet, for example, his work was not about plants and flowers. It was about understanding what it means to see light. And how can that in terms of the technical aspect of it, he came up with some aspects of that. But he was obviously thinking about like what was physically happening and what the emotional response of that was, and not just in a purely technical way. If you look at something like the work of, like, I studied Da Vinci when I was in high school or senior school, because I
Mhm.
was fascinated by that. And his work is like indivisible from everything else. His like scientific investigation of
Mhm.
how the world works is just an integral component of his his development and work as a technical artist. And obviously, I'm not quite a Monet or a Leonardo da Vinci,
But
but
see,
especially within magic,
but what you're saying about these people is that the thing is that, and what I find out compared to your work, is that they're able to take something that's super technical and condense it into a form that is understandable for the public and relatable.
yeah,
So,
it's
like, if
part of
you
it's
see
a
the
bit like
Deciduous Man, you can understand that it had something to do with like geometry and the relation of man and shapes and in the you could understand that. But if it's in a math form, it's
yeah,
abstract. But people like you, for example, will see a math thing and see the geometry of it, the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
artistic field. And from what I'm understanding from what you say is that yes, you say for artists to be able to blossom and to fulfill like their maximum of their capabilities, they need to be vulnerable and like there are, like you say, you have your own filter. you leave these things come to you, and you want to express like your value through that. So it's a very, very delicate thing. I find like it's basically like you're a lens in a certain sense.
Yeah, there'll be things that you like perhaps are trying to think about, and like things that you want to try and make sense of in terms of how the world works or how you interact with the world. And I think that like any creative art provides an opportunity for you to kind of like to think about it in a way that's not just linguistic.
Hmm.
Because I think if you once you start like having a philosophical discussion with somebody about how the world works, almost always what you're really doing is having a conversation about language.
Hmm.
That what that there's that like that mind experiment where there's a frog that's jumping towards the edge of a pond, and every time it jumps, it goes halfway,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And it'll never reach the pond.
and it never reaches
Yeah,
the
yeah.
end.
I was reading that yesterday, actually.
I know. I would say my son's about to just knock on the door or come in,
No
so
problem. Yeah, I see him there. It's all
bless him.
good.
It's just school's out. And
Yeah.
but you kind of what you end up having to do in order to have the conversation about what is going on in that mind experiment is that you kind of end up having to like define what the word reach means. What does it mean for it to reach? What
Hmm.
does it mean for it to be halfway? Because
Hmm.
the word halfway describes a certain position in space,
Hmm.
but like you end up having to break down the word rather, and so we're bound by language in that way. Whereas art, because it's not got all of these little units of meaning in the same way as like with words, it's a bit more. It sidesteps some of the filter that we've got. There you go. This to where immediately. That's why I wouldn't have you saying don't like be esoteric about it, because I think it is quite esoteric, even on a pretty surface level. Once you
But
start
then
digging in,
again, it's the understanding of that. You're saying language. People, the word esoteric and occult sounds like super polarized to one side, but it's just a word that means secretive. So it's just understanding these things in the right language from them, and that just basically to fall back to phase one inspiration, you seem to be really inspired by the understanding of systems and artistically the way that you're made, you're wired is that when you express that, it comes out in a visual shape, like a coherent visual
yeah, because
system.
it's a if you were a kid and you spent all of your time singing and your family sang and you were always singing at every minute, then when you have a sort of a feeling or a thought or something that you want to express, that's how it's going to end up coming out. You might find yourself singing a song around the house, and you without realizing it selected a song that has a particular meaning that you can dissect.
Hmm.
Whereas if I grew up as an artist and like designing stuff, and I've got this interest in magic that also connects to some of my views about, like I said, like the sort of coming up with an idea of how the world works, then
Hmm.
it's inevitable that once I start trying to dissect and trying to express those ideas, that it's that language that I'm familiar with. Like I said, I haven't worked in Illustrator for so long. It's a relatively straightforward way for me to bring some of those ideas out.
And it's something that I ask to other creators in regards to when we talk about tools. What is your take on AI, since we're talking about like tools and Illustrator?
So I did say this was going to be only an hour. Like I use AI quite a lot. I think anybody who looks at my work and is familiar with the kind of tools that are available at the moment will see that there's something that I use. Um, but my goal has always been so. From one side, in the same way as like I drive a petrol car and I don't think that petrol cars should exist. Private car ownership is stupid, but I have got a car. I think computers were a huge misstep for the human race, but I'm working on a computer, and my goal is for it to be as as seamless as possible. I think that AI environmentally is absolutely atrocious, and I find it very frustrating. But from a creative point of view, it is an incredible tool that is completely unparalleled, almost in the history of the development of creative tools. I've been sitting using AI literally just before we on this call to develop a product for one of my clients. And I would suspect that no one who would look at the product would ever know that that's how it's been done,
Hmm.
because what I do is not to use it as type in like what I would like design the back of a playing card.
Hmm.
There it is. But in the same way that I've always used things like stock photo images and like fonts that have got vector resources in them, and since the early days of my design work,
Hmm.
it kind of occupies a similar space to that. So I tend to use it as um, uh,
An
small
accelerator?
resources or a rendering method.
Yeah.
So I'll like sketch something or design something in a particular way,
Hmm.
and then use some of the tools to um, you know put it onto like a different style or to
Yeah, yeah. But would you agree? Because
process it in some way.
we see a lot of these photos, like example on Facebook, okay? Would you agree that if you leave the AI kind of generate on its own, there is a signature to the style?
There's
The
a
color
few,
palette,
yeah.
the
There's a
color
few
palette and the illustrations, the way that they come out, I find that you can tell.
there's a few things that like I think that are becoming the hallmark of
Yes.
AI, and I think that it has an aesthetic that is going to over the next 10 years become the dominant aesthetic of like our visual culture.
Hmm.
I think that it's probably I think that it's a bad thing overall, but at the moment, yeah, if I like I know that it's something that gives me such a commercial advantage because I'm also like I've got quite good at using it in a.
Yeah.
So I'm torn.
But
You can tell that I'm torn. I kind of like it in terms of
yeah,
what it could
but
do. I don't like it for what it is.
without seeing your prompts, because the thing with people with AI, if they're not necessarily familiar, is that it's all about the prompt, okay? And I compared this because I use AI as well, and I write music, okay, beyond what I do with magic and stuff like that. What I can compare AI to for me personally is that, and it's just to see if you see it the same way. Um, let's say you're a music producer and you get a talent that comes into your recording studio, a singer. The singer, she has the voice, but she doesn't know, like, she's not a lyricist. She can't, she doesn't have the presence. She doesn't have the dynamic, range. And then you basically form her. So that's like the equivalent of the prompts. So that when you put her in the studio and you say, sing this way, na na na, you're basically molding that tool to your needs so that it fits the your desired outcome. So you can do that with a human. The thing is that this you're doing it with like a synthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, essentially, like if I, for example, if I was using it to create a set of like pseudo photographs, then I am not the photographer. I'm an art director. So it's the almost
exactly,
the exact same process that I
exactly.
think that perhaps people aren't familiar with the existence of art directors as a whole.
This and that for
Um,
me to create. That is exactly it.
but essentially, an art director is somebody who writes a prompt, but then it
Yes.
sends it off instead of sending it off to the AI, sends it to like a
The
photographer, a graphic
production,
designer,
exactly, exactly.
and there's almost nothing that I do with AI that's not something that I couldn't just do another way. So I'm
Yeah,
producing some pseudo photographs today. I could just have painted them in Photoshop, or I use
yeah,
Blender or create a scene in Blender.
yes.
Um, so I try and do that. I use it as like I said, a rendering method,
Yeah.
and I don't inherently feel that it's fundamentally different in some ways to like people talk about it's a shortcut, you should just learn to draw. Okay, well I did learn to draw, but for example, like if I wanted a three-dimensional scene of something, I could draw that. I
Yeah.
used to teach product rendering at Coventry University for the product design course because I could take a sketch, put it
Yes.
into Photoshop, hand paint it, and it would look
Yes.
more or less like a photograph at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I could do is I could build that scene in CAD, in 3D, in Blender, and
Yes.
then Blender will do the job that I would otherwise have had to do inside my
Faster.
mind and construct an answer as to what it would physically look like for that
Exactly.
object to exist in 3 dimensions. So
Exactly.
that's cheating as well. Like doing it that way. Why not just learn to shade it yourself? And I don't have like a particularly compelling or convincing answer. My son, who just like tried to come in, is like vehemently anti AI, and he's also
Fine.
incredible at spotting it, which is a great combination for him.
Mhm.
We'll be walking somewhere and he look at a sign and just be like, nah,
No.
it's not
But
the
like
one.
you just mentioned, and that brings something to mind. I do agree that maybe over time there will become like a saturation of that AI style. But then people such as yourself or other creators who have a signature style, they're gonna peer out anyways.
I think that very early in the development of this current round, like the phase of AI that we're in at the moment, where there are like easily accessible and quite effective graphic creation systems. There was an artist that I follow on Instagram who does video game like product development, concept development, and he's got this very sort of arch gothic style that's quite sort of like mechanical and a little bit sort of spooky. And he started experimenting with some of these early systems, and it was immediately recognizable that it was his work.
Hmm.
Even before he's not got like any laurels or style things or anything that he's doing that's any different. It's because he had a way of visualizing what he wanted, and he was good enough at like pinning that down and describing it that he was able to like manifest that through the system. So I've
Hmm.
always kind of tried to do that whenever I use it, for there to be not just like taking what's fed to you from the AI, but like trying to get as precise as possible to what my original vision was,
Yes.
in the same way as that I would if I was doing work in Blender and trying to work out what rendering method or what lighting I'm going to use, or if I'm doing a drawing in Photoshop or an illustration or using Illustrator or just doing it on a piece of paper, that I have a vision of what I want and I'm going to use those tools to create it. Whereas I think that what happens with a lot of people, because they don't have a background in visual arts and they don't have a lot of experience in developing visual concepts, kind of just put the rough shape of what they want in, and then when
Exactly. Yeah.
ChatGPT gives it back, ChatGPT has a very very specific and very recognizable visual style.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the one, that's that. And I think that in the way that they've intentionally done that, because it has that quite yellow cast on all of the stuff
And
that it
blue.
creates.
Yellow and
Very
blue.
odd. I don't know why it does that, but you can immediately see
But
everything's
I
like
kind of
slightly
think
recolored.
if we go with the idea that it takes data and then it makes an average, yellow would kind of be like, it's kind of like mixing where the middle ground would be and everything. So yellow would kind of be maybe,
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know. But do you just find, because I'm curious before we get to phase two, over time with these prompts and using, do you find that it's able to understand your signature and by using less and less detailed prompts that it kind of gets to your objective faster and faster because over time it kind of knows you?
No, the way that I work is probably not the same way that a lot of people work. So I have all of the stuff that, as much as possible, that I use, I run on my own computer. So I've got a lot of control over the back end. So rather than it like invisibly somehow learning my way of working, I'm always using the exact same system, but I've got a load of workflows, which are literally like, it's like a visual programming language where you node everything together and you connect. I've got this, and this, and I've got a toolbox of checkpoints, and I've got like a bunch of different things that I can connect in that I can then use to affect it in certain different ways. So rather than it necessarily learning how to do what I've like with an iron fist made it look the way that I want it to look, so that I can guarantee as much as possible that I can get the look that I want to.
Mhm. So,
Yeah.
so basically, how do you take this inspiration and set it aside for your work? So for phase two exploration, you seem to be a really organized guy. So do you need to set aside, like, let's say, I wake up at 9, I stop at 4, like,
No,
and
it's a
also how
it,
do you manage family life with them?
I am extremely organic in the way that I work, and not particularly organized at all, not even in a commercial sense, which I think that if you spoke to some of the people that I work with and for, they would immediately say to you that, like, that's not how Phill operates. And to the extent that I've looked at all of the levels of these, like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements that you talked about in terms of phases. And whilst I can identify them in my own work, they don't tend to be like phases one after the other or steps.
They're not the same order, correct?
It's not necessarily that they're not the same order. They're not in an order, because there's so much of it is an overlap. It's just like a
Mhm.
cloud of all five overlaid over each other.
Okay, yeah.
Because because I have a lot of projects on, I could open up my like to-do list now of projects for me, for other people,
Yeah.
and it will be 15, 20 different projects, all of which are kind of on the go, kind of
Mhm.
somebody's expecting me to send them some artwork soon.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so like completely aside from any of the like creative aspects of that, I've never been particularly good at being ultra organized in that sense, which isn't great, like from a business standpoint, but from a creative standpoint, I tend to focus on what's got the most resonance in the moment.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't set time aside in the day. I don't necessarily have a set thing. I'll just wake up, send the kids off to school, have some coffee, and then come in the shed, and there'll be some stuff that needs doing, and for whatever reason, oh, like if there's one that's in a rush or somebody needs that day, that's what I'm going to prioritize and focus on. And if there's something where there's no immediate, obviously, like this one's in a desperate rush, everyone just wants some nice work doing,
Yeah.
then I'll just like pick up the thread of whichever one it like hits me the most in the morning. I quite fancy. I've got to do a load of writing, so that's what I'll do for that moment. Or I've got to build something in Blender, so I'll do that. Or I kind of fancy seeing what this product's going to look like, so I'm going to do a couple of visualizations. Or
So you'd say it's more of a lifestyle.
yeah, that's a depressing way of putting it, I think. But yeah, I don't. It's I think yeah, I definitely do like I do live it to that in that sense. I when needs must, when there's projects that have got deadlines on them, they get done within deadline.
Mhm.
If I need to put my nose to the grindstone, then I do that. I have got a to-do list that has at least
Yeah,
something,
yeah, yeah.
and it is in an order, and I understand what all of the next steps are. I think that part of it is because I've just been doing it for a long time. I've got a reasonably instinctive overview of the whole thing, so
Yeah.
I understand that like there's this thing needs to happen now because the best thing that can happen is so like I'm working for somebody at the moment who's releasing a product through someone else. So I know that at some point over the next week he's going to meet the other person who's going to be doing the release. So I
Yeah.
need to have a visual. So rather than digging in and doing all of the work on that, so I'm going to like put the whole thing together. I'll do a visual for it, um, and then once he's got the okay for the visual, then
Yeah.
what I'll do is I'll build the file in such a way that when they say go,
Yeah.
I can then automate as much as possible to do the manufacture for it. So
Okay.
I've got processes for everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
None of it's very interesting.
Oh, well, I mean, well, from you maybe, but for certain people who need to like find a way, or maybe sometimes it's even just validation saying, yeah, well, I'm not the only one who's not structured, so because when you have a family, like you just said with your child, sometimes it's not that obvious to be able to juggle like, your family responsibilities versus your creative endeavors and work.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm here when the kids go to school in the morning. I'm here when they come back. I try and sort of be as present as possible and do as much as possible. And that means that sometimes I have to work in a way that will fit around them rather than forcing them to fit around what I'm
Hmm.
doing.
Hmm.
Which
Hmm.
is that's the nature of being a freelancer, though, isn't it? That's the same in anything that's like a running gigs like this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
what step are we on? I've like it's just trying to put it all together.
yeah.
Incubation was it, or exploration was the second one?
Yeah, exactly. Exploration.
I've got at the moment a lot of what happens is that I've got a reasonable idea of where I want to go with things,
Hmm.
but I've got files and stuff on my folder, so there will be times when I'm just trying to figure out like the outer space of something. So it's like I've got an idea for like a mathematical process to go from any image to a marked back for a card, for
Yeah.
example.
Hmm.
So rather than like just having, I can take that and then figure out how to do it and then produce the marks for it. Is there a way where there's a workflow to go from one directly to the other
Hmm.
so that I can more streamline an offering to people who are interested in having that? Or
Hmm.
maybe it's a new tier of product that I can offer or something like that. So
Yeah.
I've not solved that one, but I've got a folder on my desktop and it's a bit of an ongoing, I've like every now and then when I'll see something online or oh that's a good idea, maybe I'll try that, or there's a new approach or a new piece of software or just something that I want to try, or some just something. So I guess I'm constantly looking at things, and that's the that aspect of it. But there's not like a formal, I set aside 1 hour a day
Mhm.
to doing this sort of R&D kind of thing.
Yeah. Organic.
um yeah, it's a little bit more, the majority of the time what I'm doing is working on like projects. That's the it's not a case of organizing different phases of time. It's just a case
Hmm.
of doing the production on the projects, and
Yeah.
then within that there's like elements of exploration and experimentation.
And when you're doing that, and your objective is obviously to get to point three, Eureka moment. Do you find, well, two things. Do you find that there's a structure or some sort of a system that you could put in place where you can generate those eureka moments more easily?
Yes. So I've thought about this a lot over my career, and if I'm a professional creative, so when I come in and sit down, if there's a job that somebody needs doing, and I'm not feeling the creative
Yeah.
vibes,
Yeah.
although like I still need to do it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Um, and I remember I got like into writing. I was trying to write a novel ages ago, and one day I'll get back to it. But I was used to listen to like a writer's podcast, and the woman who presented the podcast had this attitude that um, the writer's block didn't exist,
Hmm.
that it was like an amateur's problem. Because
Hmm.
if you're a professional writer,
Yeah.
you
You
it
work
just
through it.
you just thrash through it, you just work through
Exactly.
it.
You work through it.
I think that maybe if I do end up a little bit stuck, then I've usually got there's a million other things that you can like shift onto another project for a little bit until the penny drops on the first one, because like I said, I've got like
A
I've got a
couple.
lot of them like on the go.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but there's not like a formalized thing. So wait, what was the question?
Well, basically, do you find that over time that you have a sort of a structure in place that when you do that, the ideas like the Eureka moment, you can, I'm not going to say generate them on command, but facilitate to get an outcome because you, like you said, you're a commercial creator, so that means you can't necessarily have an
Yeah,
idea on a button, but you have to kind of,
you kind of got it. Yeah, so I write a lot. I find that
Mhm.
because there's no visual definition in writing, you can
Like
just like
physically
chew
writing.
through an idea, and it's not restricted by like if I wanted to draw something,
Yeah.
you have to know how to draw everything in
Hmm.
a way. Like if I wanted to draw something that was huge, how do you draw something that's huge? Whereas if you're writing about something, it's got to be huge. Just write it's
Hmm.
huge.
Hmm.
So it's very easy to. It's like a pre-sketch sketch. So like I will
Okay.
write
Yeah.
ideas out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll just like I'll put like the what's the word like voice detection typing on my computer and just like monologue
Yeah.
like I'm coming up with a script for something. Often because of that will be what I'm looking for is before I'm necessarily coming up with all of the uh since we get rewind and go focusing exclusively on magic, it will be like the script or the presentation, or not like in a tight way, but like I'm trying to describe to somebody
Hmm.
as though it were real.
Yeah.
And then often that will like kickstart the process in terms of like as you're talking through it, you
Yeah.
think, oh, that was interesting. This bit that we just hit would be that would be an interesting thing to present to somebody. Or like as you're talking, you're thinking that would be the bit that I would be like, oh, okay. So you
Hmm.
begin to see where the like the different heat zones kind of are in the project, the things that perhaps you need to pay more attention to, and that often will like unclog the pipes
Yeah.
and get things moving along a little bit.
But speaking of unclogging the pipes, do you find that there's a pattern of when these ideas emerge? Like, is it more like, let's say, end of day when you're tired? Oh my God, they had it. Or is it just general whenever?
Yeah,
Or
that's a
like
good
you sleep
question.
and you wake, oh my God, I was dreaming of that. And then you can't sleep. You wake up like, I have to do it now.
That happens
Oh my
quite a lot.
God.
There will be yeah. So sometimes I'll have like a dream which has got some aspect of it in,
Okay.
or I'll wake up in the night and whilst I'm trying to go back to sleep, I'll like just like turn something
Okay.
over in my head a little bit.
Yeah.
How am I
Okay.
going? How would I attack that? And again, because there's no like boundaries or constraints,
Hmm.
that can work quite well. But it kind of like it can hit at any point, really, can't it? There's that I don't have a time when I'm always thinking of those, but I tend not to. Yeah, it tends not to all happen all at once. It's a work process.
Yeah.
That's why it feels a little bit weird sometimes to have been like at the beginning. I'm talking about it all being esoteric, but like it's not some kind of weird mystery where I'm waiting for lightning to strike out of a clear blue sky. I come in the shed, switch my computer on, sit down, and then that is
Yeah.
it's a thing that I do during the day.
Because I don't know if how you dream about these things, but I find that when you try to well, this is something that can be done in meditation, is that you're not limited by the speed of your executions, you know? So you could go through these ideas super fast, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
tend, yeah, I tend to try and like see myself executing these ideas in fast forward since I can't do it in real life. And then for some reason, since I'm doing it in fast forward, I come to the objective faster.
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
I don't know if that is something that the people realize or take the time to see how they process the things when they're, and also like you just mentioned, it's like when I fall asleep and then you wake up, there's that in between where you're half conscious and half seeing,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and that's like daydreaming in the day because you're saying it happens anytime. But I would be curious to see now that we're discussing in the future if ever we talk in those moments, it's maybe when you just let go and you're not forcing it. It's when you let go of the attention that then oop it comes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah, I think that that's probably true. Um,
It's like it's when you're not it's when you're looking for at it, it's behind you. So when you stop looking, it gets in front
yeah,
of
that
you.
definitely is the case. That there'll be
Yeah.
something that you've been desperately trying to solve, like a problem that
Yes.
you want to resolve mentally. So you're going to be like, how are we going to do this? That'll be this particular
Hmm.
piece of this project. And then it's just a case of being able to trust that if you shelve that rather than focus exclusively on it now,
Yeah,
there'll be a point like tomorrow when it
exactly.
will just like great, it will make sense or it'll
It'll
like come
come. Yeah.
together.
Because it is processing, like you said. You have multiple of those in the background. They're just going like that, and then they're I call it like percolating. You know, they're just. But like you said, like it could be one moment will be, the production idea is ready, so I'm gonna start producing. The idea for writing is ready now. I'm gonna start writing. The graphic design is good. I'm gonna do Illustrator. It's whatever is there when you're ready for to do it. You will execute that thing.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. And I think as well, you'll kind of sometimes get like clues and hints from the universe as to sort of
Yes.
what direction you want to be pointing
Oh
in.
my God. So are you
But
superstitious?
no, not like that. It's just part of my model. I've got I think that things stand out. You're constantly being bombarded by more things than you can
Yeah.
process, and
Yeah.
sometimes things will stand out and you'll notice them. Um, and I think that sometimes there's a significance to that that kind of suggests that some part of your brain is like drawn your attention to it.
Yeah.
Like um, and being aware of that, you find it happens more. Like if you like
Pay
accept that that's
attention.
a thing that your subconscious is trying to highlight certain things, and the only way it can do it is by subtly nudging you and saying,
Yeah.
"Notice this."
But it's like a
Um,
radar.
yeah,
You
yeah,
have to
yeah.
leave that radar on. Yeah.
And so like I use this phrase now every now and then. Again, something's like universe approved, and
Yeah.
it'll
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
I'll have been thinking about something,
Mhm.
or had a conversation with somebody about a particular thing,
And
and
you
then
want
somebody the
confirmation.
next day, yeah, somebody will
Yeah.
message me about like, oh, I want such and such a project doing,
Yeah.
and it's what we were
It's the
just talking
thing.
about.
Yeah. So I get the sense of I'm really enjoying this conversation because I'm getting the sense that even if you're very like analytical, that you still leave these little esoteric instances peer in to give not to say a sense or a direction to what you're doing, but it's kind of like this whole ecosystem or something where because like you're saying you want validation for the universe that you're on the right path towards something. So and then when I ask, are you superstitious? It's because for me, I start seeing little confirmations like 1111 or like I'll start seeing little visual cues that'll or the idea that we're working on, I'll start seeing those ideas popping up all of a sudden everywhere. So it's like, I was on the right path.
Yeah, essentially, though, I'm trying to think how I would describe it is that you will begin to notice what feel like extraordinary coincidences that
Yeah,
rhyme with
that is
or
very
are
good.
connected to ideas that you are thinking about. So
That
there'll
is very
be
well said.
a phrase that you have never heard before that you read in a book, and then later on that day, someone says it on TV, and you're like,
Exactly. That is
wait.
very well said.
And I think that the psychologists refer to it as Baden-Meinhof syndrome, and it's a variation of that. But it's a subconscious thing that your brain does because
It
you're
is.
constantly building your world based out of this limited sensory information,
Uh,
and only certain things can have highlights put on them. Your brain can only certain things, your brain can be like, that's important. Pay attention to this, notice that.
Yeah.
And I think that the things that it chooses to highlight to you that
Yeah.
you notice, when you notice that kind of coincidence,
Yeah.
there's not a reason why the coincidence has happened,
Mm-hmm.
because coincidences are always happening.
Always there.
There's a reason why you've noticed it.
Yeah.
And that's the part of that's the esoteric bit, I think. Whether you
But
see that as a purely psychological
yeah,
function, which it could
do you
be.
see it as a something to be noted?
So something to be what, sorry?
Do you notice those and do you take them into account?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay.
yeah, 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 yeah. I don't necessarily think that it's anything more than just but like your brain doing it. But like that's me. That's where I am in the brain. So like it adds. I think maybe you're right. Like there is an element of authenticity to it because it allows you to use the art process
Hmm.
to allow these things to come forward. So you
But
perhaps wouldn't have noticed certain things that your brain is doing or that are happening in the world if you weren't engaged in this project, which has these elements of it in. It's
but do
too
you find
weird.
that?
This is too weird. This is people going to watch this and be like, can't he just talk about doing a mind map or
Well,
sketches?
no, but see that no, like I'm really find this. See, like we barely. I tried to like skip the point two and three because I'm like I'm going to keep this guy here. We're already hitting 1 hour. It's because are you realizing or seeing that after this little conversation that the task of what you're doing is so much more complex than actually saying that you just do art direction? You know what? It like
I know, like, look,
if someone no, I'm not saying you, but I'm saying that I feel I do it similar to there's other people that they're like a little bit like creative in all of their spheres. But the thing it's more than just being creative. It's being sensitive. It's being able to put aside a little bit of the ego to listen to outside things. It's a really complex thing, I find.
yeah, I mean, again, it's at the risk of like it's a what is creativity, and again, it's not necessarily just a philosophical discussion. It's like a language discussion,
It
isn't it? Because
is.
we think about creativity as being almost like a commercial skill. You know, I come into the shed, I charge people to do what I'm doing, and like the fact that I'm quite creative and I've got a process for being creative is a commercial skill. But at the same time, what's allowed me to stay doing that is the fact that there is like another tier to it beyond the very mundane, like nuts and bolts practical aspect of it. That
Hmm.
it's a like a personal development tool. It's a way of like constructing like a pattern of development within your own life. It's
Hmm.
an opportunity to consider philosophical things that you perhaps wouldn't otherwise have. And in the same way as you can find meaning in somebody else's art, you can look at art that you yourself have created and even the process that you built around that art and identify philosophical aspects of that that reflect you that you hadn't thought of before. I've always known that it's like a very complex process. I've never thought of something as being just creativity
Hmm.
or just art or just design.
Hmm.
You know, that's why art and design have it's one of the first things human beings ever did, and it's still one of the things that's like critical to our culture.
Yeah. But would you find that there's a little bit of luck to be able to find that kind of a voice within the world of magic? Because magic is so different than any other art form.
So,
Yeah, it can be just visual and extracting, but it can be super meaningful, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like any like work of art, like theatre, like music, classical music. It is as deep as you want to go with it. I think that magic has become like I love the commercial aspects of magic, but I think that it is tempting for it to see it as like a little bit trivialized sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the things that I quite like to do is to try and sneak like what I would consider to be sort of like quite esoteric ideas into
Hmm.
like really commercial projects. Like so
Yeah.
like Mr. Commercial is like Craig Petty, and I
Hmm.
will still try and like smuggle some weird ideas inside
Yeah.
the projects for him. I'm working on one at the moment, um, which is a very like simplified, reductive, almost like childlike idea.
Hmm.
Not in a bad way. I think it's going to be a
No.
killer
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
Um, but I realized that it was very similar to something that was much, much more complicated
Hmm.
and arcane and historical. And I kind of pitched him this idea that we should do a version of both of them. And even though both of them are going to be very commercial and quite visual, the fact that there is a connection between them is me saying, look, these two things are the same. This will make sense later in the year when these things come up. I can't really talk about it at the moment.
Yeah,
But that's like, it's a way of finding, even within this commercial art,
yeah,
a way to like develop ideas that are more complex. And
yeah.
whether people necessarily identify those things, or whether somebody sits down and goes, oh, that thing that Phill did was clever, he drew this parallel between these things,
Hmm.
nonetheless there is somehow out there in the magical culture this slightly more complicated idea, and some people will find it resonant, some people will find something in it. Good enough for me.
So step four, because I don't want to keep you all day. Not that I want to jump through, but
You're like, Phill, put a filter on, edit
no,
yourself.
no, I would keep on going. That is not a problem. It's honestly just for you. It's more for you because I don't like. I respect your time. We're not in the same time zones. I enjoy like discussing this. I find it's super inspiring, intriguing, and everything. And so for me, it's not a problem to continue. That is. So step four would be exploration. So for exploration, do you tend to, well, like you say you go to the shack and you work, do you bounce ideas off of other people? Do you rather just keep it to
Yeah.
yourself? How do you like?
So I mean, a lot of the time that's a real important thing, like developing these ideas. And I tend not to, although I'm not plugged into, like I said, the magical community, so I'm not going to loads of magic meetings, and I'm not at every convention, and I'm not always doing Zoom calls with other magicians. But I've got a small group of people who I kind of like to bounce ideas off. So sometimes early in a project, like what I'm preparing almost is like a pitch to them, even though it's not their project, just to
Hmm.
be like, oh, I'm working on this and I had this idea, because I know that they might come back with a good idea, and the act of condensing an idea down enough to be able to explain it to somebody else also helps you understand what the constraints and the boundaries are and what there is that needs to be done with it.
Hmm.
So that like having a network of people, I think, is perhaps like one of the most important things.
Hmm.
Um, Working with clients is interesting in that regard, because you have to understand kind of what their brand is as well. So like I do a lot of design work for Luch, who runs Read My Mind,
Hmm.
and he's got quite a specific way of
Yeah.
presenting things, and like what he is going to like physically bring to the table when he's performing has to
Hmm.
fit inside certain parameters. And so part of the time, well, is like, and this is the case with any designer who's working for other people, you've got to understand um, them as
Yeah.
well. And
Yeah.
being able to riff with them, like talk with them, talk those ideas over with clients, um, can be very interesting and very rewarding, and it can highlight things. And I've got a well-defined workflow for that. And over the last year or two, I've developed these new sort of almost like products, which are a way of people to work with me that kind of focus almost exclusively on that process.
Hmm.
So it's almost a packaging of that process, so that aspect of the creative process. That's been interesting, and that's also highlighted the strength of it by coming up with ideas that I wouldn't have come up with and that they wouldn't have come up with, but that working together,
Yeah.
we're
But I'm
able
guessing
to.
that for that to work, you need to find your own tribe because a situation that I find is plaguing the magic community is the whole idea of ownership of ideas. And then it's the ego of who is going to be the face of bringing that idea to life, kind of, you know?
Yeah, that's usually pretty well defined for me. I'm always well aware that when I talk about how I interact with the magic world, that I've got a slightly unusual perspective on it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, there is always that, like, I think with, especially with magic, that I remember very early on when I started getting into magic, that you'd meet somebody and there's this like they're trying to work out like where in the pecking order you are, which I never really liked, because like I'd never want to be one of the cool kids. That's not like.
No, I hear
But
you. Yeah, yeah. I'm happy to
um,
hear
but
that.
but like that, I used to find like when I would do magic meetups with like the local guys, and there would be like a process of, in the same way as if I'm developing something for a release or for a performance, that I'd have in mind something that I wanted to talk to them about. So
Hmm.
I would kind of like try and develop that with a goal of just like literally having the conversation. And I think that idea of like forcing you to have some kind of process to be able to present an idea to someone else, even
Hmm.
if it's in that very informal setting where you're immediately going to talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
That itself has a great deal of value. Yeah.
So now that we have kind of covered all the bases of the inspiration and all the like the systems and the way of working, well, since that you have products, you seem to enjoy having those ideas become their own entities. So for step five, basically, that's implementation. So for someone who, what would you suggest, like for someone who wants to try and take their ideas and bring them into life?
Yeah. Yeah. So the tools that are available to people now are incredible in terms of like being able to digitally create an idea. So if there's something that you wanted to somebody fancied making a deck of cards, it's never been like easier than it is now
Hmm.
to do that, to bring that kind of thing into life. But that's like a very reductive view of magic in terms of it just being a deck of cards, just because I sit in a shed designing decks of cards. Um, Whatever I think somebody's like end goal is, whether it even not in magic, I think that the like you need to make sure that you have good technical skills um in some way to be able to like bring that idea into life. So if you're writing briefs for a designer, you need to be good at writing them. You need to be good at like visualizing those.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you're sitting down and designing something to like go to print for playing cards or a trick or something,
Hmm.
then you need to have like a good facility with whatever tools you are that you're using, because unless you have like quite extensive technical ability, then you're limited in terms of what vision you can bring to life. So if I have an idea of what something's going to look like,
Hmm.
I've been doing this for long enough that I can make it look like that.
Hmm.
Whereas if you've got a very limited technical range, then you can only produce and you will only visualize work that exists within that technical
Exactly.
range.
Hmm.
So it's not like ultra necessary to have like good technical skills, but if you can develop them, then often you'll find that along the process of developing them, it will allow you to think about like projects and project outcomes in a slightly different way. But then again, technical stuff is so easy to learn now. I went to university and studied like games design and multimedia design, and I had like a tutor who was teaching us Maya 3D and 3D CAD software, and it cost me a lot of money to not really get anywhere learning any of that stuff. And then during lockdown, I decided that I wanted to learn how to do 3D stuff properly. So I downloaded Blender, which is a free 3D program, and I just used YouTube,
Yeah.
and I got to a professional standard by doing projects in this software
Hmm.
and following instructions on YouTube and reading tutorials, because that was more effective than my actual university education with a professional tutor.
Yeah.
Getting me to that point. So if there's technical things that people want to know, like now is the premium time to learn it, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. I guess it's just having the desire to want to learn as well, because sometimes people want to have the easy way where, you just press something and a prompt and there's an idea.
Yeah, and but then like having good technical skills in terms of being able to do graphics and things like that make some of the AI stuff a lot more accessible as well. But often I'll see things where people have produced, a graphic with AI, and there's like a glaring mistake that would have taken them like 3 minutes to fix in Photoshop,
Yeah.
but they've not because they only know the basic tool.
AI didn't do 100% of the job. I'm not doing the last three.
Yeah.
I'm leaving the mistake.
Well, you can use the AI in Photoshop to do it, but you've got to
I
know how
know.
to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, with everything said, well, we went through basically all the five questions here. I hope it wasn't too strenuous for you.
No, I mean it was a terrible explanation of my. Well, no, was it? What
No,
people have done
I
is they've
think
just
it
walked into a cloud of nonsense,
was
and that's pretty much what my creative process is. Maybe this was the best explanation of my creative process we could have had. It doesn't
good.
quite make sense.
Yeah.
Got to the end. He's not really said anything. An hour has passed.
I know, yeah.
Technically, he's done the job.
As long as the material keeps coming out and it's always at that standard, I guess the mystery is
Yeah.
good, huh?
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, yeah.
So if
But
you were
maybe
to
if I
give,
ever work it out, it will stop. I figured out how I do it. So it's can't do it anymore.
well, you're going to put that in the novel, right?
Yeah,
So if you were to
that's
give
it.
like recommendation or like let's say advice for someone who's working in the creative field. Let's say in general, not necessarily in regards to magic, but just in general, like advice into let's say how to sustain a successful career. Because having ideas is one thing, and it's like no, but seriously, having ideas is one thing, but how would you, what advice that you would give to someone who to try and monetize that? Because that is, it's not very easy because certain people, including myself, it's hard to put the right value to your work and stand by it. And you know what I mean? Like wait until there's a client that's willing to pay the real value of your work, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I think that the way that you kind of nowadays, the way that you've got to do it, if you're at an early stage, if you are waiting for somebody to come and start giving you briefs,
Hmm.
then whilst you're waiting for that to happen, develop your own stuff.
Yeah.
You know, whilst you're waiting for the record company to find you and sign you, you need to develop your work as an independent. Like, whilst you're waiting for the phone call from Murphy's Magic, who are gonna like make you a millionaire with their like ebook download or whatever the hell it is of
Yeah.
your new idea, develop it yourself. Like, do whatever you can to bring that idea to life.
Hmm.
If you're waiting for like the industry, the world to notice your stuff, you've got to make it as noticeable as possible. And I think that the way to do that now is, like I said, to develop your technical skills and to do it by developing your own ideas. Not necessarily that somebody's going to be releasing things, but if you're interested in developing magic, then that's what I used to do. That's where I first started like doing this. Is I was just could like sit and think about magic tricks all the time, and I just wrote them up just for my own amusement. And then that kind of formed the backbone of the first book that I did. And if I'd have been waiting for somebody to call me up saying, "So we need you to write like 50 magic tricks," then it would never have happened unless I'd already done it for myself to prove that I
Yeah.
could do it.
Hmm.
And it would have sucked as well because I wouldn't have had the experience of doing it. So I think that that's the way now, isn't it? If you look at people in like the music industry who've been successful, a lot of the time, like Macklemore or Ed Sheeran and people like that, they've just done it themselves
Hmm.
and they've become superstars. But they didn't wait for somebody to come and hand it to them. They just did it until someone was like, "That's good."
Well, exactly. You have to keep on hustling. And even if you're going to get a lot of shut doors, but you have to keep on hustling regardless, you know?
Yeah, I think that you've got what's that? It's become unignorable, haven't you? That's the if you reach a point where you're good enough at doing it, then the phone will start ringing or the doors will open for you. But you've got to, like I said, those opportunities are like those weird coincidences that we were talking
Yeah.
about before. That
Yeah.
if you're not turned on, if your brain isn't looking for them or
Hmm.
accepting that that's what they are,
Yeah.
you know, that then you might not recognize that what has just happened is a door opening for you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And just before we quit, is there anything, any projects that you would like for people to have a heads up on?
Well, look, I mean, we've got. I've always got a lot of projects ongoing. If people are interested in like any of the stuff that they've just heard, if they want to work with me, if they want to see some of my tricks and things like that, go at philsmithcreative.com. We're at Blackpool in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure like when you're gonna like put this video out, but if it's
Super
after or
possible.
before Blackpool, then you guys should like pop in and see us if you go in. But or just like find me on Facebook or Instagram. I've always got loads of nonsense going on. That's where you can see most of it, I think.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for all of your time and your knowledge. It was super insightful. I hope that you got a little bit of something out of this yourself.
But yeah, it's been really good fun, and it's been interesting to look at it all, how it works or doesn't.
Awesome. So hopefully we keep in touch and talk soon in the future.
Cool. Thank you, dude. Thanks for having me.